Yes, let's go. It's another Sunday on the Power Series, and today it's extra exciting. I'm yours truly, Samuel Adrenya, bringing you another awesome episode of the Power Series. As you know, every Sunday, we bring you nothing but Power Series or Power Platform goodness. Today, I have with me a special, 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 special guest. I'm sure if you're following us on most of the social media channels, you would have seen him. But when we come back, he's going to help us demystify the whole thing of on-premise data and the Power Platform. Don't go away, stick and stay with me. We'll be right back. Awesome! We are back. We are back. We're back. We're back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and I like to say good dawn to you, depending on which part of the continent you find yourself. This is the one and only Power Platform show that brings you closer to the Power Addict, to the MVPs, to the Power, crazy guys who are making Power Platform an awesome, awesome platform to work with. In today's episode, I have with me someone, I mean, we've just connected on that level. I can say someone I call my brother. He has an interesting story. He is like a 12-time MVP, and it's amazing. I won't talk that much. Let's just go right into it and welcome. I think today I'm going to set up my drum roll very well. Let me drum roll and welcome onto the Power Series. And maybe with a drum roll and a little clap to introduce Mariano. You are alive, brother. Welcome to
Hey, how you doing,
the
man?
Power
How's it
Series.
going,
I'm doing
Sam? How's
awesome.
it going?
Awesome,
Thank you,
awesome,
thank
awesome.
you, thank you, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate you taking the time to invite me over and talk a little bit about myself and certainly what we're here to talk about, which is demystifying a little bit of the misconceptions around the on-premise world with Power Platform. And I am particularly looking forward to talk to it with you, brother.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we connected a couple of weeks ago. We're talking
Yeah,
about, hey, let's do this. We were, trying to, and then there was a game of switching where, he would try to reach me on probably like Teams or, like my send me a message and I wouldn't, get back to him on time. It was just kind of like, some Tom and Jerry thing. But today we eventually
yeah,
got it
yeah.
connected. Awesome,
We
awesome, Mariano.
eventually got connected, and definitely, after playing cat and mouse game for a bit, we actually got a chance to be together on the show today. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for honoring us. It's always an honor to have great guys like you driving the platform, share your knowledge and help people across the globe watching us to know that they can do various things and they can get started or get into this power thing without, having to, fear or worry. So, as we do on the show, we want, in the beginning or, in the first phases to get to know who Mariano is, where you come
Yep.
from, how you got onto the power platform. Interesting things you want to tell us about. So we can establish this is the type of guy we're dealing with today.
So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna guide myself with a small slide deck that I put together. So hopefully this shows up nicely on your screen.
Sure, awesome.
Okay. Just let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can. And you've got the full screen, brother.
Yes, thank you, man. I appreciate it. So my name is Mariano Gomez, popularly known as the Dynamics GT blogster, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. But I've been a Microsoft Business Applications MVP for over 12 years now. My first bout with the MVP program was in 2008 when I received my first award, and ever since I've been on this track of business applications. But I'm also the director of technology at McCormick Incorporated. We are a AP, and AP meaning accounts payable payments automation, um, you know, ISV for the Microsoft Dynamics GP platform. So a little bit more in depth. I been delivering Dynamics CRP and CRM implementations for over the last 20 years. Being just about all over the different continents, except for Asia. I haven't been to Asia or Australia. Working across these various continents and countries, trying to help customers realize their investments in Dynamics GP and or Dynamics CRP in general and CRM. But I keep talking about Dynamics GP because that's how I got my start. Dynamics GP is a Microsoft on-premise legacy ERP system, primarily, uh, you know, primarily exists in the North American market, although there are customers just about everywhere. Uh, Dynamics GP is actually big in South Africa, for example. I know that
Yeah.
we've talked about it in the past, but I just wanted to bring it here. Actually, highly used in the Middle East as well. Certainly, in certain parts of Australia, in Spain, in the UK. So it had in the past a very strong international presence, although it was not as necessarily as widely used as AX or NAV at the time internationally. So you will find most of the GP customers concentrated in North America and South America for sure. So that said, you know, that's a little briefer on me. I really don't want to make the show about me as far as my personal life is, but I hail from Colombia in South America. I grew up in a very small island in the Caribbean that belongs to Colombia, and I started my journey in the Dynamics world back in 1996. In fact, um, you know, when I first started working with Dynamics GP, was to develop the Spanish release of for Latin America, and I had
Mm.
most of the localizations for Latin America. So now I know where your question is coming next. It's going to be, well, how did I get into this Power Platform world?
Exactly.
Well, um, a couple of years ago, really, I started to take interest in the platform and the things. I think, like most people, I started developing Power BI reports.
Mm.
Right, that's probably the first contact I had.
Yeah.
But then I came to understand that there was these things called Power Apps and Flow at the
Flow.
time.
Hmm.
See, so I really started to inquire more into it and get a little bit of a peek directly from Microsoft at one of the tech conferences that we had in Fargo, North Dakota. And for those of you who are not familiar with Fargo, North Dakota, if you follow my mouse here on the screen,
Hmm.
it's just about somewhere up here, actually, in the U.S. So
Okay.
that's where the headquarters actually for the business solutions teams are. So you will find most developers for Dynamics 365, for Dynamics GP, certainly in the Fargo area in North America. So um, that's in essence kind of my contact with it. So last year for my renewal, I was actually for my MVP renewal, I was actually honored to um, tag on the Power Apps and Flow MVP. So yes, I'm a dual MVP. I'm a Microsoft Dynamics GP MVP, but I am also a Power Apps and Flow MVP. So and that's kind of how my journey started. And really, if you follow the movements out there, I'm a member of the Power Addicts movement. I'm
Yep.
a member of the Flow Fam. So, hashtag Flow Fam and hashtag Power Addicts out on Twitter, and you can basically find all sort of very smart people who probably sometimes smarter than I am on what on the amount of work and knowledge that they deliver across the Power Platform. So I do encourage everyone who's watching us right now to go out there and follow as much content as you can if you're truly interested in developing your skills on the Power Platform.
Awesome.
Okay,
Awesome.
yeah,
It's
probably good intro, right?
I mean, when you're talking about how you got into the, this whole power thing, makes me remember kind of like my journey as well, because I had my first contact with Power BI, and I was just, intrigued by the way you could do your own analytics reporting and all that,
Yeah.
and that was just it. And then I think later on it was a show I chanced on a show by, what's her name? Gordon. She's
Mm,
something on the Power App. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then down the line, I saw this fidget spinner being built, I think by Ashley or so on one of the YouTube channels. And I was like, no, I need to take a look at this. But like I say, all
yeah,
along, I have been doing a lot of logic apps and automation. So Flow was kind of there, but I didn't really realize it was a connection of things. But that's interesting. And that
yeah.
also informs us on, like you're mentioning, why you have that, your YouTube channel that is a lot of, dynamics and, CRM, ERP content. So that's amazing. And hey, talk of MVP. I know today is 1st of March, so congratulations to all those who have received the
Yes,
official, awards. I think they deserve, a clap. Congratulations to them. So if you are one of the new MVPs, hey, big ups to you. There's more work to be done. It's just just a cool one. So big ups to you guys. So we've been talking about how you got into it. Now we know how you got into it. We know all the cool stuff. The whole story of coming from Colombia. And I just want to chance on this opportunity to let people know that it doesn't matter where you're coming from. There is
that is
always,
correct.
there is always an opportunity for you. I keep using Summit's story, and now your story is another to talk about. So it's just a matter of you taking the initiative. I want to, just try it out, and see if you don't like it. Hey, no, no one stops you. No one, has any
That
problem
is
with that.
correct.
Just, go try it out. Build something, do something, and you'll be amazed. I'm sure later in the show, you're going to tell us some more about, that unique story of yours. Now, let's come back into the Power Platform. Now,
Sure.
there has been this myth that you can only use the Power Platform conventionally for just on-prem, sorry, cloud-based or 365, based data, which is not true,
Yep.
right?
That is not and that is not true entirely. And one of the things that I want to bring today
Awesome.
is this agenda where we're going to really talk about some key aspects of that will enable you to leverage your on-premise data. And in fact, if you look at it today, the cloud is fairly new, right?
Yep.
The cloud as a phenomenon is fairly new. And you gotta imagine that a lot of the data that you're contending with today doesn't exist in the cloud at all. It actually exists in servers in your offices. It exists in some data center that sits down the road from where you are, or you know um, any of these number of storage, uh, traditional storage capabilities that you had before. That's where your data resides today. So even though the cloud is a fairly new phenomena, the cloud is still in the process of developing itself, and vendors are still in the process of figuring out how they deliver a lot of these services. So, um, you know, I like to talk to my customers. Yes, if the cloud is good for you, get there, figure out a mechanism to get your data in the cloud, to develop your processes and business systems in the cloud. But for that process overall takes time, and it basically is going to be a thing that's going to drive technology probably over the next 10, 15 years. Yes, the cloud is a reality, but on-premise is also a reality. So for this series, I want to talk about the on-premises data gateway. I'm going to go through an overview of that, setting up connectors, and I'll show you a couple things that I've done around blending the world of on-premise with the world of cloud. And but what we can't deny is definitely that the Power Platform is here to stay. But at the same time, your on-premise data and your clients' on-premise data, your business systems do exist today still in that shape and form, and you can still leverage it with these cloud technologies. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So let's start out with the on-premises data gateway. I want to do a quick review of this because this is probably one of the most misunderstood components in the Power Platform overall. And I think I want to look at it from an architecture perspective, but if you want to put a definition around it, the on-premise data gateway is actually the piece of software component that allows you to integrate your cloud services with your on-premise data in a secure way. That's as simple as it gets. So, and that is done in a number of ways. So you have, if you look at it from a pure architecture perspective, you have obviously have cloud services such as Azure Analysis Services, Power BI, Power Apps. I still have Microsoft Flow, but that's the akin of Power Automate. And you alluded to it earlier. Azure Logic Apps is also part of that a part of that scene. So the way these services connect is you have a cloud gateway service that then uses the Azure Service Bus to then talk to this application gateway that exists on premise. So this fine line here that you see here, that's the line that divides the on-premise world with the cloud world. And you might ask, well, what does that look like? I actually have it here. So if I move this over here, this is what the on-premises data gateway look like. It's just an applet really that runs on any server with a direct line of sight to your data. That's what you should understand from it, right? And I have actually labeled this gateway as Mariano SQL Server. Yes, you can actually label use gateways, right? But that's because it's pointing to, or it's actually going to consume or be used to work on MySQL machine. But this can be labeled however you want. Now, couple things that are interesting about this is the gateway also provides a version number. Like in this case, this is the November 2019 version that was released with the UI flows, and we can talk about how UI flows leverage the gateway in a bit. So when we get to some of the demo aspects of our presentation today. But as you can see right now, these are the services like Logic Apps and Azure Analysis services that I currently don't have configured, but you can actually set up a gateway in Azure. And I don't know the extent of which this series will allow me to do some of those talks, but a gateway in Azure is this gateway that we're talking about here that we pointed out earlier. That's the piece of integration that you need to set up. So that gateway can actually talk to your on-premise gateway via for anything that you choose to develop using Logic Apps or Azure Analysis Services. But by default, Power Apps and Microsoft Flow and Power BI are environments that already once you install the gateway and configure it, automatically get attached to using this particular service, local service. So you have some capabilities at the service level, for example, where you can set up a service account for your gateway. Typically, what I do recommend is you use a domain account for that, right? Whether that's an AAD account or a Windows Active Directory account, you should probably use a domain account to run your service. Well, that's going to give you a couple things. You can do things like Kerberos authentication, which is something that I know a lot of people who are concerned with security will want to do at some point. You can run some diagnostics with your gateway, be able to pull logs from the gateway itself, export the logs of connectivity. You can do some additional logging. I don't have this turned on because, as you would imagine, this will start to consume these resources that I don't want to actually do at this point. But you can also test your network ports to make sure that this gateway is properly connecting to your cloud services. The other thing here is, and this is fundamental because I know a lot of you who are concerned with security will want to know that you can also enable these gateways these gateways in HTTPS mode, and that will allow you to communicate through the service bus using HTTPS, which is secure. And if you want to use a certificate with that, you could probably do that as well. Okay.
Hmm.
So as far as connectors, the gateway also stores your custom connector information,
Oh,
right?
okay.
That is actually stored here locally, and there's a file or a directory where you can point that by default where you can point this to. You can sort of change the directory wherever you want. And there's also the ability to recover keys. The keys are nothing more than the actual keys that are stored with the gateway when they are when you set up the gateway initially. So the next question that I typically get after this is, so how do I go about getting the gateway and installing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to switch over to this to my Edge browser, and here you can download the gateway from the Microsoft download page. So if you just go out there and Google on-premises data gateway or Microsoft on-premises data gateway, chances are you'll get a download page that will allow you to retrieve the software from the storage services online, and then you
So
can.
Mariano, hold on. Just
Yep.
just playing, that just playing a newbie or a dumb person here. From
Hmm.
what you're explaining to the ordinary person, so the on-premise data gateway will allow me, to expose my on-premise data without having to, have any, reconfigure my firewall or or have any security issues. Is that the case with the on-premise data gateway?
That is correct.
Okay.
So basically, it establishes that secure channel between the cloud and your on-premises resource. And note that you said something interesting because the gateway does not really expose my data yet. My data is exposed via the connectors, and we're going to talk about connectors in a bit, okay, or connections. So that's absolutely important to highlight because in reality here, what you're doing is you're establishing that pipeline between cloud services and your on-premise um, resources. You still have not exposed your data.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I want to make sure that that's supremely clear.
Yeah, because people
Okay.
get a bit, nervous, like you're
Mm-hmm.
putting this piece of software on my machine or on
Yep.
premise and it's, exposing data and security and all that. So we just,
Yep.
concern as an ordinary user. Yeah.
Understood, and it's a valid concern, and it's a valid question because I don't want to convey the impression that by installing the on-premises data gateway, you are automatically exposing the data. That's not entirely accurate.
Awesome.
The part that
Awesome.
is accurate though is that you are creating that connection between your cloud resources and your on-premises resources. So that's a good point though.
Awesome.
So, if you go ahead and also Google install on-premise data gateway, um, you will find the docs page with detailed steps as to what you should be doing to get that configured. There are some special configuration options, so you can cluster these gateways as well to provide some sort of redundancy between the pieces of software. So if one service go down or one machine goes down, you still have the ability to access the resources through other machines that you might have configured
Okay.
with the data gateway. Okay, so the other thing here is, so once you have the gateway, there's two places you can actually check for installation. So if you go here on the data and gateways, it should list all the gateways that you currently have installed. Like here, I have one that points to this particular gateway that I have on my server. on my local machine, but I also have one that is pointed to our cloud VM for our particular company. And because we also run Power Apps internally,
Okay.
we have a couple Power Apps applications that we work on, but our QA team also has their own gateway for QA resources for applications, commercial applications that we're building and that need to be QA'd. Okay. If you remember, I think I said I work for a Microsoft ISV. So we do have Power Apps internally, and also we do produce commercially available Power Apps applications. Okay. So
Awesome.
going back to that, once you set up a gateway, it's pretty simple. All you're gonna hit here is new gateway, and then once you download it, install it. This is another way of downloading the gateway as well. It provides direct access to the
Mm-hmm.
download from here if you don't want to have to query or Google where to obtain it. So it's a quick way of doing it. But then here comes the secret, the other secret sauce, right? So I'm gonna go back here, and we talked about connectors. Many of you probably have seen this slide a million and one times, right? But the connectors is actually what give you access to your data. Okay, so once the once some of these actually have seamless hybrid connectivity to on-premises systems via the on-premise data gateway. So things like the SQL Server connector, the SharePoint connector, um, the um, so I think there's an Exchange connector as well. So
Mm-hmm.
some of those things are already some of these connectors are already enabled to use a hybrid connectivity approach to data that sits in the cloud or data that sits on premise. And we're going to talk about, I'll show you a quick example right now on how that works. But if you go here under connections, again, under data, and click here for connections, you will see that I have different
Mm-hmm.
connections that I've created. But I want to go to this Power Series environment that I created. Look at that. See, I'm
Awesome.
honoring the show,
we
man.
we have our own
Yeah, there you go.
environment.
I'm actually setting a Power Series environment. So this
Oh,
is
oh,
something I had set up. One of the things that I want to
mhm.
highlight here is the gateways
Okay.
can be used across multiple environments.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
that's you don't have the need to set up gateways all the time for every single environment. They're shared across
Oh, shit.
environments,
Okay.
but the connections are not.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
I can create a connection that is specific to this environment. And in this case, I want to connect to my local SQL server, so I can use the SQL Server connector. Um, there's a couple things about this particular connector. First of all, you can use Azure AD, integrated authentication. This is new, by the way. So this was actually delivered around, if I'm not mistaken, it was delivered around what's this event again?
Is it
That
Ignite?
was Ignite in
Yeah.
Orlando. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
So this connector was, or this authentication method was delivered around Ignite, I believe, maybe shortly after. But we always had SQL authentication and Windows authentication. So I'm just gonna do a simple SQL authentication. Here I'm asked for the server name, and that server name can be my on-premise server name. If I have, yeah, obviously, if I have the the ability to reference those through my gateway. So I can actually select the name of my server and go back over here. Where are we? Right here.
Yep.
And paste this over here. I can select my database name. So I know I have a database for sure called TW19.
Mm.
I can select a username. As every good IT guy that's testing something, I'm going to use SA. But no, you shouldn't be using SA to connect to your on-premise server. You're going to want to use an account that has obviously as little security as possible. So you can also minimize the chances of compromising
Yeah.
your data.
Yeah.
But I think you get the point here. This is not a security um, it's not a security session, but I want to highlight that you want to use an account that's and has little restriction or little as much security as possible. So then I am pointed to the gateway. So this is where things get really interesting because here is where you will want to then select from the gateways that we created, what gateway we're going to use here. So that's very important. So once you hit create, obviously it's going to go ahead and add that connection,
Connection. Okay.
and now you have access to your data. See, so that's actually what I wanted to show. So it's not enough to have a gateway installed. You also have to have the right connector to get to that data. So I think enough said with that. Now, again, if you wanted to set up your custom connectors, you can set up that. But for those of you who dabble in the world of Power Automate, note that you have the same capabilities under the same places. So now that connection that I just created will probably show up here because obviously it's a connection that is shared across Power Automate and Power Apps. And if you had Power BI and you were hooked up to this environment as well, you'd probably see the same connection. So is that fairly clear up to now?
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
it's quite clear. And takeout is the gateways are used across can be used across all environment. Connectors are
Mhm.
environment specific. So yeah,
Correct.
that's clear.
All right. So now that you guys know how to set up on-premises data gateways, now that you know how to set up and use connectors and connections to the data, let's just see the magic happen, right? That's kind
Yep.
of what we want to do. So I have Microsoft Dynamics GP here because I wouldn't be happy if I didn't show you some of it first. And one of the things that I have or that I'm normally asked to do is to, if I were in the AR department, accounts receivable department, I'd probably want to check my customer summary. So let's see this customer Aaron Fitz Electrical. And if I hit calculate here, I can see quickly that they have a balance of $24,272.06.
Okay.
But that's cool because I'm the person sitting in the accounting department, or I might be a salesperson in my office or have access to my application. But what if I was a field guy,
Mm,
right? Or what if I was working in the field and needed this information and I had to complement it with Google routes and
mhm.
instructions on how to get to the customer?
Yeah.
Um, that would be a little bit more of a different situation, right? What if I was in my car most of the time and all I had access to was my mobile device? So um, obviously, those questions are actual true business cases that you probably want to be able to address and provide a solution for. So if you see here, I'm going to go back here, and this is an app that I built based on that data. And all of this is a customer list. And as you can see here, I still have Aaron Fitz Electrical. That's the same customer that I inquired over here. All right, Aaron Fitz 001. That's their summary information. So this customer obviously has a detail that I can enable here. Um, if I click, or actually if I play this and I click on this particular one, now guess what? Now I'm on route. I can
Yeah.
actually inquiry the customer balance. I know what their payment terms are. I know what the last payment they made,
Mm,
the last payment amount. This sounds like information that a salesperson could use in the field
in the field. Yeah.
if they were actually visiting customers and making sure they were, going on a route trying to provide or get information for that customer. Now, the other thing that I did here was I did some Google Maps integration to this,
Okay.
and you have the ability to either go
Zoom.
at a zoom
Oh.
in, zoom out. So those capabilities are directly inside of the Power App that I created. Furthermore, I can go and get the route, and I don't know if this is working or not. But see
Okay.
if I actually what it does is it
Oh.
uses my GPS positioning, and then you can see now where I am in the United States. I'm here
Oh.
in
Okay.
Atlanta. And if I wanted to drive across the whole country to get to
Yeah,
this
to get
customer, I could do it,
yeah.
right?
No, but that's
So,
cool. Having, it get, plots the route right on the
correct.
maps. That's yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here with my mobile device, and I have not only the information that's coming from my accounting system,
Hmm.
but I also have the capability of adding integration to Google services. I have the customer contact information. If I was halfway through and I wanted to say, "Dear Aaron,
Hmm.
you know, I am heading towards you, you know, want
Yeah.
to discuss your account," I could do that. So this provides a detailed way of and it's an integrated way to probably deal with some customer
Yeah. Engage with them.
contact from engagement.
Yeah.
Correct. I could integrate this furthermore into my CRM. So if I wanted to update uh, Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE with this information and this contact that I just created, or this approach that I just did, I could do that. I could hit submit here, and that
Yeah.
would up my not only would Aaron get a an email from me, but I could also update my CRM with the last contact that I did. So that's one example of the things that I've created. Um, I actually have demoed this in uh, a couple different events that I've attended.
Mm. Mm.
So it's actually one of the cool things that you can do.
Yeah. And for
Um,
all those watching, I mean, this data is coming off an on-premise data from
mhm,
Dynamics GP. So it's not as if the data is residing in the cloud. This is like data on-prem that you could, expose to your field agent, to make use of some of these features. Cool, cool, cool.
correct. So I want you guys to start getting an idea of all those systems that you have laying around that that you feel people could make use of, or even your sales agents that have to visit different customers or so on. So this is just a simple example on something that I created out of data that comes from my ERP system that resides on premise. When ERP systems especially on premise ERP systems are ripe uh, for this type of hybrid approach
Yeah.
to cloud, you know, especially power apps and flow applications. So a little bit about how I built this.
Yeah.
Um, this application simply uses SQL. So I think
Hmm.
if I go here to customer list and I click on this app somewhere, or this gallery, actually, I can see that this
Yeah.
gallery
Hmm.
is actually obtaining information from my data source,
Yeah. Yeah. Customers.
and
Okay.
I can look at, I think on the apps on start, I believe.
Hmm. Yeah.
I haven't done this app in a while, but you can look at the app on start, and that app on start will be basically loading some information. I can expand this for a little bit. And that's the other thing. When you're working with SQL, see, I'm actually
Yeah. With the
getting
customers. Yeah.
directly from the customer stable. That's actually a customer stable that has these cryptic fields that
Hmm.
are exposed to Power Apps. But then again, you know your data source better than anybody else, and you
Yeah.
can figure out how that will work for you much better. But I also wanted to switch over to Power Automate because I want you to understand that this is not only available with Power Apps.
Power apps. Okay.
So, so if you go to Power Automate, as I said before, those same connections are exposed to you. So if I wanted to update, um, there is a nice little demo that I like to do, and that is if you go to create, I'm going to create quickly an instant flow. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this backup database.
Mm.
What do you think it's going to do?
Back up the database.
There you go. So I can actually trigger this. and I can hit create. So what's that gonna do is it's gonna create a manual trigger. And what I'm gonna do here now is I'm gonna say, well, what's the name of the database that I want to back up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna change this here for database name, and as input, I'm gonna say that's what the button itself is
Yeah.
gonna ask me, right?
Okay.
So the next thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna hit new step, and I'm gonna add a connection. So I'm gonna add SQL Server. And the SQL Server action, the SQL Server connector has several actions.
Mm.
One is execute a SQL query, delete a
Mm-hmm.
row. You can execute a SQL stored procedure.
Procedure. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to call the stored procedure. And the name of the SQL Server then will be, I can use the same connection
Yeah.
setting as
Connection.
you can
Yep.
see here. Okay, I can use the database name. So let's say that I want to enter a custom value, and that's going to be, say, actually, let me hide this for a second. Let me see if this is exactly what I want. Connection settings. Let me see database name. Tell you what, let me create a new connection because this is not going to do what I want. This is
Okay.
bound to a specific database. So I'm going to
Okay.
hit new
Yep.
here and then say SQL Server. And oh, I think I know
Yeah.
what I missed from it. So execute SQL procedure. And then here, what we want to do is we want to add a new
New
connection.
connection.
That's
Okay.
multi. Okay, so I can add SQL Server authentication.
Mm-hmm.
I can add the name of the SQL Server again, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
this time, what I want to do is I want to work with my master database,
Database. Yeah.
right? So I have certain things here that I want to work with, and I'm going to actually select the name of the gateway that I want to
Mm-hmm.
use. So now I can hit create. And then this connection, of course, is going to be added to the list of connections that you
Connections you
have.
have.
Cool.
Okay. Cool.
There you go.
Cool.
This is much better now.
Yeah.
So here I can select this. I can select
Yeah.
master
Master.
database.
Yep.
And here I have a procedure called flow backup database.
Oh.
Okay. I
Okay.
created this one. So just for you people who are geeks out there like me, I'm just going to launch SQL Server Management Studio here quickly so you can see what we're talking about.
The definition of the stored procedure. Yeah.
Correct.
I mean,
And
I'm just going off, top of my head, thinking about, how lazy I want to be, as let's say a database administrator. I could
mhm.
probably use, connect this flick button,
Oh,
have
yeah.
series of these buttons on my decks and something. This is, push to backup, push to do something, and then, I can
Correct.
just push it
So
to do the backup.
the practical case of that is and I'll get to that in a second. But I'm trying to talk and do two things at once, so that never works out well for me. So let me try and get to this first. Hit modify here. But this is a simple stored procedure
Yeah.
that I created. That all it does is it backs up the database. It
Database.
brings in
Okay.
a database name as a parameter, adds the back extension to it, and then it runs the backup database statement with this variable value that is set up. Okay, so again, just a little something for you SQL Server geeks out there. So if I use the database to backup, then note here now that database name is going to expose from the manual trigger.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
expose that data content from here. So that dynamic content, that's what I'm going to choose.
Okay.
And then that's all there is to it. So I'm going to hit save here. And of course, I don't have to tell you, rename your stuff, make sure you set the right names to
Names. Yep.
your Power Automate flows and what's not. But I'm going to click test here. And the one thing we're going to do is I'm going to trigger the action manually.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Save and
uh,
test.
let me see. So you guys don't think I'm cheating here. I'm just going to go here to see SQL Server and flow
Full
backups.
backups. Okay. So
And there's
this, yeah,
nothing in there,
that's
right?
empty. Yep.
So if I now hit save and test here, the first thing that this should do is it should ask me for a backup database
Mhm.
name, or well,
Yep.
it should sign in first to my SQL
Yeah.
Server and ask me now for the
Database
database
name.
name.
Okay.
So So we can see the magic here. Pick any database. I'm like a magician now. Pick any database from this list that you would like to back up.
Let's do, let's say TWO 16.
TWO16. So,
Yeah.
okay. So what we're going to do then is we're going to type in TWO16 in here
Okay.
and hit run flow. And if everything works as expected, what we can then do is go back
Do a
here
check.
to
Hmm.
our
Oh,
list.
there we go. Ah.
Now, the
That's
good thing is,
awesome.
and I'm not sure how, I didn't have the screen mirroring for my phone ready, so I apologize for that. But I'm gonna try and do this from
From the phone. Okay.
from the phone, so I can show you guys what that looks like. But if I go to buttons,
Mm-hmm.
let me see here. I can't. Let me switch the environment. This is the beauty of this thing to my Power Series environment. Oh, I'm so proud of my Power Series environment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can see now that there is a backup
Okay,
data
backup.
button on my
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, yep, yep.
Okay, so just imagine if you're on the go and somebody say, call, and you're the database administrator, and somebody calls in and say, "Hey, listen, we have an urgent need to back up this database here.
Yeah,
We notice that you're not home or you're not in the office. Can you help us out?" What a simple
yeah,
way to do it. And as you can see, I only had to do what, a trigger and an action,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
If I really want to get fancy, I could have added here another action.
Yeah.
Um, actually go back here to edit because I also want to probably be notified when this is completed,
It's
right? So I can
completed.
send
Yeah.
a notification. It says send a mobile notification and create a notification message that says something like database database name
Mm-hmm.
has been successfully backed up.
Backed up.
Okay. Now, obviously, you can play with the return code if you want. So the return code is blah blah blah. Then you can say, yeah,
Yeah.
was this fully backed up or not? What is the return code that you got? And you can go and create another action that goes out and retrieve what the problem was from SQL
Yeah. From a
Server,
SQL. Yeah. Yeah.
from Microsoft Docs. So there's a number of things you could do. So. But this is just a quick example on how you would leverage in this case, Power Apps, Power Automate to use on-premise data. And as you can see here, not only did I access the data, in this case, I backed up an entire database,
Mm. Yeah.
right? So think about all those things that you can do that are possible to do with the type of data that you have, the type of resources that you want to access or not access. You can actually access your on-premise SharePoint lists, your on-premise SharePoint document libraries, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Think of all the
Yeah.
possibilities that can be. And I know I'm running short in time, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring this up quickly for the audience and make sure that you guys have a little bit of information
Yeah.
on me. You can follow me on YouTube. I'm also available on Twitter. I also have my own blog. So those are resources that you can subscribe to in order to keep up with me and all my crazy stuff that I do on a daily basis. So uh, you know, kudos to Sam. Sam, I know you actually making inroads into the African market and
Yep.
certainly internationally, which is show. And I really, really want to encourage you to keep doing this because is the best thing that we can leave as a legacy for
Yeah.
the entire community to follow. And this is, having a show like this is probably one of the key things for the community to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, thank you for those kind words. It actually motivates us to do to do more and to bring more people on. That's amazing. Whilst you were doing that, I was like, okay, because there are situations whereby you're talking to, let's say, financial institutions. You're talking to you know. So Brian, thank you very much. Brian is saying the show is one of the most professionally produced shows.
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
One of the show is superb.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
So I was just, talking about how difficult it is to get people to, especially financial insurance and, sometimes government agencies when you're trying to pitch these things to them. And one
Hmm.
of the things that come, off immediately is um, we don't want our data to be in the cloud. For whatever myth they have about the cloud, they're like, no, we don't want our data to get into the cloud. And honestly, from our part of the world, this actually hinders a lot of productivity and innovation. For instance, you want to build an application that is harnessing data from, let's say, DMV or something. Some are
Hmm.
reluctant to easily expose the data, or they don't having APIs to allow you to access the data. But I see this as an easy, low risk way of going in there and say, look, guys, you still control your data. You have access
Hmm.
to your data. You're just giving us, access to just the subset of what we need to run the application and to
Now,
modernize your operations.
that's very key because I also wanted to highlight something. Did you at any point see me, exporting data into some table in the
Excel or
cloud
something and then
or
send the email. No,
sending it out?
none
No,
of
this
those.
is all leveraging data that actually sits on servers that exist on premise.
Yeah,
And I, at no point in time, made any attempt to move that data out of those
yeah,
repositories where they exist today. So that is something that is very key, especially if you're having these kind of conversations where there are still some reluctancy to moving to the cloud, or you still have people who have, some sort of, it could be competitive advantage. Some
yeah.
businesses do see their data as competitive advantage, and they
Mm,
don't want to have to think about any aspects of moving that data outside of where it
yeah,
currently
where it is.
resides.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm not saying those things are right or wrong. All I'm saying is, this is an easier conversation to have with those type of customers when, especially when you can prove and show them that that data did not make it outside of their, you know, of the element where it exists today or the environment where it exists today, and you are still able to produce an application that had, all the feature set that I just displayed in both cases.
yeah.
In one case with Power Apps, and in the other case with Power Automate
Automate. Yeah,
to to do a couple things around the data. So
yeah. Awesome, awesome. So, Mariano, can you switch back to, just your view? And we have a few more minutes. I just
yes,
want
sir.
us to um, go and, just not deviate, but just get a bit, into yourself and advice you have for people trying, to get into this whole Power Platform thing. Because I know that at some point, um, we talked about you coming from South America and all that, you know um, your life, and how that affects, how that affected your decisions, to do
Hmm.
things. Yeah. So I don't know if you just, like last words, if you could just share a few, last words, advice, um, things that you think you probably would have known before coming into power, or things that are guiding you in this, quest or journey into the power platform.
Yeah. So the first piece of advice that I always have for people is don't be afraid of trying, right? That's I think Brian or yourself said it, but I think you have Brian online. But the
Yeah.
one thing that I always run into is this whole apprehension of against learning, and I don't know that that's with tools like these that basically take the pain of extensive programming out of the equation. uh, don't be afraid of learning, of trying. Get yourself an account, get yourself a test environment, and get going, trying to learn these tools and these different environments that the Power Platform offers. And the other thing I also want to convey is start small. You don't need to try to make the biggest application in the world. If all you have to do is put a field on the screen and figure out all the different data operations with that one field, you would have accomplished any number of things that you set out to do. Sam, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
So because I have multiple cameras, I had to
yeah,
turn one of those ones down because
your video shut out, so that I
yeah,
wasn't sure.
yeah. No, I'm
So
here. I'm here.
the other thing too is, don't be afraid of going out there and leveraging the community. As I said
Yeah,
before, there's a number of people. You have Brian Dang on the phone, probably. You have, a number of people in the African region that are really
yeah,
starting to elevate the community there. I know Foyen, for example,
yep,
yourself, absolutely. Don't be afraid of leveraging those resources. And frankly, you know, attend an event,
yeah,
attend a community event. So if you guys have gatherings on a weekly, monthly basis, make some time to attend one of those events. Talk to other people who are on the same journey you are, and learn from those people as well. You will find that you have oftentimes more things in common than you
common.
than you
Yeah,
than you do than you do think you do. So I would say, that's definitely at least four pieces of advice that I have for those of you who are listening in today, and hopefully, we can take advantage of all the resources, all the people that are out there, all the different outlets that allow you to elevate your knowledge. So I think
yeah.
that's my recommendation.
Awesome, awesome. People, we are honored to have the Don himself share all these cool stuff for us. So you can now walk to client and say, hey, let's put your on-premise data, let's hook it up to Power Apps, Power Automate, and do some, crazy stuff. Mariano, we are very, very grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you, sir.
This was
Thank
Deep
you for having me.
Insight. It's always an honor to have people like you on the show sharing, your thoughts, knowledge, and skills. So we appreciate that. Well, folks, that's all we can have time for today. Next week, another power packed episode with another giant coming. Make sure you subscribe. And yes, so I've been getting this a lot of times. People think the show just streams live and that's it. No, it streams live and it's also on demand for you to go watch if you missed it on YouTube, Mixer, Periscope, Twitch. It's always there. So if you missed the live edition, you can always go watch it, later on. Well, folks. Enjoy the rest of your evening, depending on where you are on the continent. We are almost, getting to the late nights here. But for you out there, enjoy the rest of your day, and then make a date with us again next week for another Power Pack episode of the Power Series.
Awesome. Thank you.